Welcome, my friends. I've been sharing with you in recent videos bits and pieces out of a book titled The History of the Ottawa and Chippewa Indian in Michigan. And it was written by A.J. Blackbird. It was published in 1887. And it is full of wonderful insights into the Native American life before it was so disrupted by the coming of the Europeans. So I'm going to read from his book again some passages that I think are really awesome and set the stage for what life might have been like in the woodlands and along the waterways of Michigan back way back, maybe early 1800s, early 1700s. So I quote, "The wild pigeons and every variety of feathered songsters filled all the groves, warbling their songs joyfully and feasting upon the wild fruits of nature. And in these waters the fishes were so plentiful that as you lift up the anchor stone of your net in the morning, your net would be so loaded with delicious whitefish as to fairly float with all its weight of the sinkers." Now I'm going to end quote for a minute because I found it really interesting, because on the fields where Gil and I have gone recently, we have found an abundance of the net weights, and one nice anchor stone that I actually found in a flower garden and talked the lady out of it. So it's just fascinating to see it mentioned in context with their daily life. So I continue, and I quote, "As you look towards the course of your net, you see the fins of fishes sticking out of the water in every which way. And then I never knew my people to want for anything at all to eat or wear, as we always had plenty of wild meat and plenty of fish, even and corn, vegetables, and wild fruits. I thought, and yet I may be mistaken, that my people were very happy in those days. At least I was as happy myself as a lark, or as the brown thrush that sat daily on the uppermost branches of the stubby growth of basswood tree, which stood near by upon the hill, where we often played under its shade, lodging our little arrows among the thick branches of the tree, and then shooting them down again for sport. Early in the morning, as the sun peeped from the east, as I would yet be laying close to my mother's bosom, this brown thrush would begin his warbling songs perched upon the uppermost branches of the basswood tree that stood close to our lodge. I would then say to myself as I listened to him, 'Here comes again my little orator,' and I used to try to understand what he had to say, and sometimes thought I understood some of the utterances as follows: 'Good morning, arise, arise, shout, shout, come along,' etc. Every word was repeated about twice, and even then, and so young as I was, I used to think that the little bird had the language which God, or the Great Spirit, had given him, and that every bird of the forest understood what he had to say, and that he was appointed to preach to the other birds, to tell them to be happy, to be thankful for the blessings they enjoy among the summer green branches of the forest and the plenty of wild fruits that there are to eat. The larger boys used to amuse themselves by playing a ball game called," now here we go again with those words that I have trouble with, "paw due," which is foot racing, wrestling, bow arrow shooting, and trying to beat one another, shooting the greatest number of chipmunks and squirrels in a day. Now I never heard of any boy or grown person utter any language, even if they were out of patience with anything. Swearing or profanity was never heard among the Ottawa and Chippewa tribes of Indians, and not even found in their language at all. Scarcely any drunkenness. Only once in a great while the old folks used to have a kind of short spree, particularly when there was a special occasion of a great feast going on. But all the young folks did not drink intoxicating liquors as a beverage in those days. And we always rested in perfect safety at night in our dwellings, and the doorways of our lodges had no fastenings to them, but simply a frail mat or a blanket was hung over our doorway, which might easily be pushed over or thrown aside without much of a noise or effort on on the person who was trying to enter. But we were not afraid for any such thing to happen to us because we knew that every child of the forest was observing and living under the precepts which their forefathers taught them, and the children were taught almost daily by their parents from infancy unto manhood and womanhood, or until they were separated from their families. These precepts, or moral commandments, by which the Ottawas and Chippewa nations of Indians were governed in their so-called primitive state, were almost the same as the 10 Commandments which the God Almighty himself delivered to Moses on Mount Sinai on tables of stone. Very few of these divine precepts are not found among the precepts of the Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, except with regard to the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Almost every other commandment can be found, only there are more in ours, as there were about 20 of these uncivilized precepts. They also believed in their primitive state that the eye of God, the great being, is the sun by day, and by night the moon and stars, and therefore therefore God, or the Great Spirit, sees all things everywhere, night and day, and it would be impossible to hide our actions, either good or bad, from the eye of this great being. Even the very threshold or crevice of your wigwam will be a witness against you if you should commit any criminal action when no human eye could observe your criminal doings. But surely your criminal actions will be revealed in some future time to the disgrace and shame of yourself. These were continual inculcations to the children by their parents, and in every feast and council by the instruction of the precepts to the people or to the audience of the council. For these reasons, the Ottawas and Chippewas in their primitive state were strictly honest and upright in their dealings with their fellow beings. Their word of promise was as good as a promissory note, even better, as these notes sometimes are neglected and performed according to their properties. But the Indian promise was sure and punctual, although, as they had no timepieces, they measured time by using the sun. If an Indian promised to execute a certain obligation at such a time, at so many days, and at such height of the sun, wherein that time comes, he would be there punctually to fulfill this obligation that he made. This was formerly the character of the Ottawa and Chippewa Indians of Michigan, but now our living is altogether different, as we are continually suffering under great anxiety and perplexity, and continually being robbed and cheated in various ways. Our houses have been forcibly entered for thieving purposes and for murder. People have been knocked down and robbed. Great safes have been blown up, open with powder in our little town, and their contents carried away. And even children of the Caucasian race are heard cursing and blaspheming the name of their great Creator, upon whose pleasure we depend for our existence. According to my recollection and of the mode of living in our village, so soon as darkness came in the evening, the young boys and girls were not allowed out of their lodges. Every one of them must be called into his own lodge for the rest of the night, and this rule of the Indians in their wild state was implicitly observed. Ottawa and Chippewa Indians were not what we would call entirely infidels or idolaters, for they believed that there is a supreme ruler of the universe, the creator of all things, the Great Spirit, so to which they often worship and sacrifice in certain forms or another. It was customary among them every spring of the year to gather all the cast-off garments that had been worn during the winter and rear them up on a long pole while they were having festivals and jubilees to the Great Spirit. The object of doing this was that the Great Spirit might look down over all the Indians who to a certain extent governed or presided over certain places as a deity who presides over this river, over this lake, or this mountain, or this island, or country. And they were careful not to express anything which might displease such deities, but that they were not supreme rulers, only to a certain extent they had power over the land where they presided. These deities were supposed to be governed by the Great Spirit above. And that's what I have for you this time, some really fascinating little insights by A.J. Blackbird as to what life was like in the Indian camps way back in the day. I hope you enjoyed this, enjoyed bringing it to you, and I will talk to you all again real soon. God bless you. Love you all. Stay safe, happy, and well.